Good morning. Today I'm going to be doing a voiceover of this slideshow. I had tried to do it in a larger chunk and it didn't work, so I'm going to do it in sections. So the first one, I'll be exploring a little bit of what came before modernism, and then I'll be digging into a little bit more about why modernism is a thing. And then I will be exploring with you guys a little bit about some examples to show you what modernism looks like in various art forms. So let's dig in today. So, in order to understand modernism, I feel as though it's important to briefly understand a bit about the movement that came before it, Romanticism. So, with Romanticism, it's from the Victorian era. It's from a time of a lot of structure, a lot of rules, a lot of society, very um, established. And so this is an example of a poem that comes from that era called A Glimpse by Walt Whitman. A glimpse through an interstice caught of a crowd of a workmen and drivers in a bar room around the stove, late of a winter night, and I unremarked seated in a corner, of a youth who loves me and whom I love, silently approaching and seating himself near, that he may hold me by the hand. A long while amid the noise of coming and going, of drinking and oath and smutty jest. There we two, content, happy in being together, speaking little, perhaps not a word. So in this poem, we have this man sitting in a bar, crowded with people after work. It's a cold winter night, and they're all hanging out, and it seems like there's people coming and going. People are drinking and swearing and telling dirty jokes. And he spies his lover coming to him, and his lover just sits near him, and they just hold hands in that space. So it's a very calm, personal, um, it's a happy poem. We were going to go see Emily Dickinson's a production about her at the PAC before all of this happened, but here's a poem from her that's also from the Romantic time called Hope is the Thing with Feathers. Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chilliest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. And in this one, it's about hope and having hope and how it sits in your soul and it's there no matter what's going on. And it never asks anything of you, but it's always there for you in all of these really hard times when it's chilly, when you're in strange places, right? So the idea of the romantic period ends up being having a lot of order and meaning and optimism. Things felt stable. They had a very solid faith in the world, could also be religious, very strong structure of morality and values, and their sense of identity was very clear. They referenced a lot of the imagination and the individual in their poetry and their works. Nature was a source of spirituality for many, linking to the transcendentalist age too. They were looking to the past for wisdom and seeing the common man as a hero. So in this, we obviously are getting this very um, clear concept that things seemed all right. I mean, it's not like they didn't struggle or they didn't have hardships. It just means that generally as a whole, there was nothing rocking their boat, as you might say. So for modernism, I want to show you an example of a modernist poem, and then I want to explore what the qualities of modernism are in comparison to the qualities of romanticism. So this poem is called Aftermath by Amy Lowell. I learnt to write to you in happier days, and every letter was a piece I chipped from off my heart, a fragment newly clipped from the mosaic of life, its blues and grays, its throbbing reds, I gave to earn your praise. To make a pavement for your feet, I stripped my soul for you to walk upon, and slipped beneath your steps to soften all your ways. But now my letters are like blossoms pale, we strew upon a grave with hopeless tears. I ask no recompense. I shall not fail, although you do not heed. The long, sad years still pass, and I still scatter flowers frail and whisper words of love which no one hears. So we have a poem now that's obviously about the aftermath of a relationship, either from loss or from maybe a breakup. But this person who once upon a time laid their soul down so that their partner's feet could walk upon the earth softly, so that they would chip parts of their heart and give them away. And then in the end, we have blossoms on a grave. We have hopeless tears, long, sad years, words of love that no one will hear. So, in comparison to some of the previous two poems, this poem is definitely a lot more dark. It's exploring some qualities of the human experience that are not necessarily that hopeful, right? It's highlighting on a difficult time of the human experience. So, considering that poem and this picture, the attitude that modernists had toward the world, I think you're starting to pick up on this fact is that they weren't necessarily a big fan of it. So we have this painting called "We Are Making a Better World" by Paul Nash, and it looks like a bomb dropped, and it's a desolate landscape. There's no foliage. It's bleak looking. It's stark. The sun is coming through. There's shadows. It's kind of ominous, right? So we're having this sensation that maybe the modernists didn't think too highly of the world in which they were living. So if we take that and we take the characteristics of what the Romantic period was like, and then we look at the characteristics of modernism, we are faced with these. They're much more concerned with their modern life, right? What it meant to be living as this in the turn of the century. History, instead of being something to look to for wisdom, it was a story of decline, right? Like we went on a downhill trend, is what they kind of felt like. Everything was going south. Poetry was minimalistic and free verse. There's chaos in the way that they wrote, fragmentation in the lines. It addressed inner thoughts. And to me, I think the biggest one that stands out and why it's important to understand Romanticism first is that it's disillusionment. There was this disappointed sense that they had, because disillusionment means you're disappointed in someone or something that one discovers to be less good than you had once believed. And that's what they had the world that they were living in, the people that they were around, like humanity, life itself, it was less good than they had believed before. So their perspective of the world centered more on chaos. Things were futile, pointless, pessimistic, unstable. There was a loss of faith, a collapse of those morality and values, and they had a very confused sense of identity and place in the world. So the question becomes, why is there this shift between Romanticism and modernism?